We're going to continue on with Gardens of the Righteous, which is a compilation of hadith that was compiled by the great Imam, Al-Imam al-Nawawi, radiyallahu anhu, who was a wali, so he's a righteous, pious Muslim, and also he was a scholar in the Islamic law, in the Shafi'i school, and he was a conveyor in the Shafi'i school, he was a preponderator in the Shafi'i school, which means he had the ability to give weight to one saying in the school over another, if there were more than one saying. He was a hafiz, so that means that he memorized tens of thousands of hadith with their chains and with the biographies and knowing the circumstances of each person in the chain. So he was qualified to grade the hadith, so he can tell if a hadith is sahih, authentic, or hasan, confirmed, or weak. So he was a great imam, and he has many famous works. Among them is this book called Riyadus Salihin, which is a compilation of hadith. He has other famous works. May Allah Ta'ala reward him. So we're going to continue from hadith number 71. We are now in the chapter of piety. So this hadith, or this category, it's narrating hadiths that are related to piety. And we gave the definition of piety last time. We said that at-taqwa, piety, it means to fulfill all the obligations and to refrain from all the sins. And that is the actual definition of piety. And whoever wants to fulfill that, whoever wants to do that, they just have to fulfill all the obligations and refrain from all the sins. Which is why the scholars, they say that technically and theoretically, piety is easy. It's meaning it's known what it is that you have to do. It's clear. It's not vague. It's not ambiguous. But the application of it is where many people find it difficult. So some people, they find it difficult to go against their desires. And so they would do certain things that they desire to do, that they're tempted to do, even though they know that this thing is forbidden, even though they know that they shouldn't do that. Or they'll fall short in doing their obligation because of a worldly matter, because of a worldly inclination, when they know that that's their responsibility, that's their obligation. So this is the meaning of piety, at-taqwa. So we're in the chapter of taqwa. And so we're going to continue on with this narration, hadith number 71. So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam narrated from the route of Ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu anhu that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, or that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam used to say, Allahumma inni as'aluka al-huda wal-tuqa wal-afafa wal-ghina. So what is the first meaning? So this is a dua, this is a supplication. So the first part is al-huda. What is al-huda? Al-huda is guidance. And so it's a supplication. The first part is asking Allah Ta'ala to keep you guided, to grant you guidance. And at-tuqa, and it does come with the meaning of piety, meaning that it does have some aspects related to it that is referring to piety. Any meaning. And then al-afaf is chastity. Al-afaf is being detached from the worldly matters, being indifferent to the worldly comforts and the worldly pleasures, the permissible worldly pleasures. So for example, the person, he would not covet what somebody else has. He would remain, let's say, satisfied with what he has, and he would not want what somebody else has. No, al-afaf is being detached from the worldly matters, yeah. And al-ghina is to have integrity. So basically the person, he would and he'd will be satisfied with what he has. He would not covet what other people want. He would, for example, be a person that doesn't put his hand out to others. Even if, let's say, they were in need, they wouldn't show it. So the Prophet ﷺ was making supplication for all those things. So that's why it's mentioned in this category, because it is related to piety. Hadith number 72, which is from Abu Tarif Hadeeth, the son of Hatim al-Ta'i radiyallahu anhu, that he said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam say, من حلف على يمين ثم رأى أتقى لله منها فليأت التقوى. So basically what this is referring to is when someone, they say the name of Allah in the phrasing of a vow, of an oath. And some people, they say vow in English, but I don't want to confuse it with another. So here, what's meant is an oath. Like when someone says, Wallahi, I won't go outside today, for example. Or Wallahi, I won't visit you. Or whatever. Somebody says Wallahi, and after that they say something that they won't do. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying, the one who does that, and then he decides, right, then he sees that, for whatever reason, to do what is better. So if what he happened to make an oath about and say Wallahi about, if doing the opposite of it would be better, then he would do that. And he would do what is better. So there's many different scenarios where that would take place, or many different ways that could manifest. So for example, if a person they made an oath, they said, Wallahi, I'm not going to pray dhuhr, the obligatory dhuhr prayer. So here they have to break it. And here they would have to do the opposite of what they made that oath for. And so it would be sinful for them to keep that oath. And they would, of course, after doing the thing that they made an oath that they wouldn't do, they would have to pay what is called kaffaratul yameen. So this kaffara, it means that, and this applies to when the person, they make an oath and then they say the opposite of it, or they make an oath and then they do the opposite of it. So in this case, this person, what do they have to do? They have to do something called a kaffara. And they have to pay something called a kaffara. So what does that mean, that they have to pay something called a kaffara? There's a certain thing that they have to do. They have the choice from three things, which is to free a Muslim slave with no crippling defect or no defect that would prevent them from doing work. And if not, or they can choose also, if they want, to feed 10 poor Muslims at least one mud of the most common food crop of that area, the most common staple food crop of that area, or to clothe 10 poor Muslims with a piece of clothing. Doesn't have to be new, but as long as it's something that won't disintegrate. And even if it's something not new, but they can, and they wear it, it's not falling apart, it's not tattered and falling apart, this is something that would be valid. So if it was like an izar, that counts as a piece of clothing. Qamis, that counts as a piece of clothing. Pants, that counts as a piece of clothing. So they have the choice of one of these three, and if they're unable to do any of these three, if they're unable to do those three, they can't do any of those three, then now they have to fast. So this is called kaffaratul yameen. So what's called kaffaratul yameen is something that you have to pay when you break your oath. So in this case, the person, they made an oath that they're not going to pray the obligatory prayer. So because of that oath, and they have to pray, they're obligated to pray, so they have to break it. They have to break that oath. And once they break it, then what are they going to do? They are going to pay the kaffara. So that is the one example of what this hadith is talking about. And the one who makes an oath, the one who says, Wallahi, I won't do such and such, and that thing that he said I won't do, and let's say it's not the better thing to do, and he sees that what he should do is the better thing, which is the opposite of that oath, then he should do it. And that's the meaning of what the Prophet ﷺ said, فَلْيَأْتِ التَّقْوَى, meaning let him do what is greater and better, yani let him break that oath. Nah, habibi. Mm-hmm. If they have something that is preventing the water from reaching the part of wudu, then they have to make tayammum when they get to that part in the wudu order, the wudu sequence. If they can remove the band-aid or whatever and put water on it without them being harmed, then they have to do that. If not, then they make tayammum when they get to that part, and then they wash everything regular. But then when they get to that part, they make tayammum. And if that part is covering any more than the wound itself, then they wet wipe over that part as well. So they wet their hand and they wipe over it. So they would do that for every obligatory prayer. So basically they make wudu up until they get to that part that they can't wash with water. Then they make tayammum and they wet wipe it. Is there any other question there? Maybe I can't hear what you're saying. Can you say it louder? Feel it? So you're going to be able to feel it? I don't understand what that means. They don't have to feel it. They just have to put it down. I just tell them to make the question more clear because it's not understood. But they don't have to feel their toe. No. طيب. You had a question yourself because you were raising your hand? No? Okay.
How do we get to YouTube? Daddy, how do we turn it on?
طيب. Going to Hadith number 73. And so I hope the number 72 is clear. Okay, so let's give an example. This happened during the time of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu had some guests in his house. His son told him that he had the guests. Abu Bakr told his son that he's going to be late to let the guests start eating. And Abu Bakr's son told the guests start eating that his father was going to be late. The guests refused to start eating until Abu Bakr arrived. When Abu Bakr arrived, he found that those guests, they did not eat. So he was not happy with that. So he said, Wallahi, I'm not going to eat any of this food. So then the matter reached to the Prophet ﷺ, and he ordered Abu Bakr, or he told Abu Bakr to eat some of the food, or something along those lines. So Abu Bakr, he ended up eating the food. Because that was the better thing to do than not eating the food. So that's basically what the hadith is saying. It's the one who makes an oath, who says, Wallahi, I won't do such and such. But then he sees that it's better for him to break the oath than to continue it, then he breaks the oath. And the Prophet ﷺ is ordering him to break the oath. It is not sinful to break the oath. So somebody says, Wallahi, I'm not going to visit you, or Wallahi, I'm not going to eat this food, or Wallahi, I'm not going to drink tea, or Wallahi, I'm not going to do this, or Wallahi, I'm going to do that. And as long as what they made the oath about is not something forbidden, like if they said, Wallahi, I'm not going to pray dhuhr today, then for sure they have to break it. And for sure they're obligated to break it. But if they said Wallahi about other stuff, like something permissible, like Wallahi, I'm not going to drink tea today, but then they end up drinking it, they're not sinful. They don't commit a sin for that. They just have to pay a kaffara. It's called kaffaratul yameen. And we already mentioned what it is. They have the choice between one of three things: to free a Muslim slave that doesn't have a crippling defect, to feed 10 poor Muslims 1 mud of the staple food crop, or to clothe 10 poor Muslims with 1 piece of clothing. And if they can't do any of those, then they fast 3 days. They don't have to be consecutive, but it is better for them to be consecutive. Naam, alhamdulillah, may Allah have mercy upon us. Hadith number 73 from Abi Umama Suday ibn Ajlan al-Bahili radiyallahu anhu, that he said, I heard the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam say, giving the speech in the farewell Hajj, and he said, Ittaqullah wa sallu khamsakum wa sumu shahrakum wa addu zakata amwalikum wa ati'u umara'akum tadkhulu jannata rabbikum. Rawahu Tirmidhi fi akhir kitab as-salah. And he said about it, Hasanun Sahih. So, first of all, what is the farewell Hajj? What is the Hajjatul Wada'? What does that mean? This is referring to the last pilgrimage that the Prophet ﷺ made. And what is that? And it means that it was close to the Prophet's death, alayhi salatu wassalam. He died approximately 80 days after that. That was the farewell speech, and he gave that speech, and the companions and the people, they had an understanding that it was as if the Prophet ﷺ was saying goodbye. So many important principles and teachings were mentioned in this speech. Among them is that the Prophet ﷺ, he was letting the Muslims know, and these are conditional statements. And so he said, Ittaqullah, which is relevant to the category that we're speaking about, which is to fulfill all the obligations and refrain from all the sins. Then it's pray the 5 daily prayers, fast the month of Ramadan, pay the zakat of your money, and listen to those that are in charge of the affairs of the Muslims. Nowadays, of course, there are no such people. Right now, there are no such people. So it is strange how some people, they try to apply this rule about those that are in charge of the Muslims. They try to apply it to these people nowadays that they are in a very bad situation, very bad state. And we're talking about Muslim rulers, not people who they are perceived as Muslim rulers. So don't think that you're being sinful if, you somehow, those people right now that are perceived as Muslim leaders, they're not in charge of the matters of the Muslims. They're not in charge of the Muslims' affairs. Right now, Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah is like an orphan with no guardian to take care of it. Subhanallah. And it's been like that for a long time. An example of someone that this would have been referring to is like As-Sultan Abdul Hamid II. Subhanallah. Yeah, it's a sad situation. Sad situation that we're in now. Sad situation that of the state of the Muslim nation, and how things turned out that way, and how things got to where they got to. But the main cause is distancing oneself from the knowledge of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah and committing sins and distancing oneself from any working for the hereafter. Subhanallah. Now, as for the ones who they truly are the Muslim leaders, the Muslim rulers, the ones who truly are Muslim rulers, it doesn't mean that we're supposed to obey them in everything that they say, even something that is forbidden. Because there is a known and established principle that there is no obedience to a creation in disobedience to the creation. So anybody, even someone that rightfully has authority over you, if they order you to do a sin, you cannot obey them. So if you were, let's say, a child, and your mother or your Muslim mother or your Muslim father, they order you to do something sinful, you have to disobey them. And so same thing with the true Muslim rulers. And so the conditional phrase, it ends with the result of, you will enter paradise. And if you do all these things, you enter paradise. Alhamdulillah. Narrated by Tirmidhi, and he graded it as Hasan Sahih. Now we move on to a different chapter, which is the chapter of certainty and reliance, al-yaqeen and at-tawakkul. What is al-yaqeen? Al-yaqeen is certainty, and not having any doubts at all. And at its core, or at its root, this is what separates the Muslims from the non-Muslims. The Muslims, they have the certainty. This is why before one of the battles, the commander of the Muslim army, he met up with the commander of the non-Muslim army, and he told the commander of the non-Muslim army, he told them that I have come to you with a people that they desire the afterlife like you desire this world. And in the same way that you, as non-Muslims, you desire and you're attached to this life and to living, the people, the Muslim army, they are attached to the hereafter. So they want to pass on to the hereafter in this way. They want, while you, on the other hand, you want to survive. You want to live. So you can't beat that. And that's why for the Muslim, it's a win-win. So al-yaqeen basically means certainty. And at-tawakkul is the heart being confident and trusting in Allah Ta'ala. And meaning that the heart is fully firm and sure that Allah Ta'ala exists, and that Allah Ta'ala is the most merciful and is the most just, and that Allah Ta'ala has power over all things, and that Allah Ta'ala is the only creator. Yani the Muslim, he would do what he's obligated to do and avoid what he's obligated to avoid, regardless of imaginary threats or regardless of imaginary things to try and scare you. Like for example, if a person, they had the choice between a halal sustenance and a forbidden sustenance, and he thought to himself, well, if I take this halal sustenance, then I won't have enough money to, let's say, have a savings account or to save money, so I won't have a nest egg, and I won't have a cushion, and I won't have something that I can save for a rainy day. And so he's thinking, well, if something happens, if I get an emergency, then I will be, let's say, struggling. That worry or that concern, the person, because they have the reliance on Allah, they wouldn't have the mentality like, oh, I'm going to do this haram thing so I could try to save myself from that concern. So they would avoid that thing that they're concerned about happening. Instead, they would rely on Allah, and they would do what's correct, and they would do what's right, and they would avoid the forbidden thing. And that concern of whether they're going to do this is going to happen or that's going to happen, they would rely on Allah, and they would just do what they're obligated to do, and they would not commit a sin because of a worldly concern. This is something that the Muslims, they need a lot. a lot of Muslims nowadays, they need that. So many Muslims out there are scared and concerned about worldly things that it's not even for sure that it's going to happen. It's not even, they have no idea if it's going to happen or not. They think it might happen. They fear that it might happen. And that fear of that worldly thing that might happen will lead them or cause them to commit a sin in the present time. But if they had the reliance on Allah, they would not dare to commit a sin. They would say, I'm going to obey my Lord, and whatever happens, happens. That is the reliance on Allah. So to have that certainty in the heart, that confidence in the heart, that trust in Allah, that is at-tawakkul. So he starts by mentioning ayat. Allah Ta'ala revealed, وَلَمَّا رَأَى الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الْأَحْزَابَ قَالُوا هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ هَذَا مَا وَعَدَنَا اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَصَدَقَ اللَّهُ وَرَسُولُهُ وَمَا زَادَهُمْ إِلَّا إِيمَانًا وَتَسْلِيمًا. Allahu Akbar. Imagine being in those times, subhanallah, and like you're with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and you're facing off against the enemy, and these different factions, these different groups, these different types of enemies, that they're enemies to each other, but they have banded together under the common cause of being enemies of Islam, and they're going up against the Muslims, and the Prophet ﷺ is telling you that for sure you are going to win. Imagine that. It's like being told the outcome before you start. Subhanallah. So they had that, and this ayah is mentioned because it shows the certainty that they had. And it shows the certainty that they had in the promise of Allah. And Allah Ta'ala and the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, they guaranteed for the Muslims that they would have victory, that they would be tested and they would have victory. So that is mentioned here in this category of the reliance, because they trusted in what Allah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ, and they trusted in what the Prophet ﷺ told them. No. And the ayah means, and when the Muslims, they saw the different groups, they said, this is what Allah and His Messenger confirmed and guaranteed and promised, and Allah and His Messenger are truthful. And this did not increase those Muslims in anything except their faith, except their certainty. And they believed in the words, what the Prophet ﷺ told them, and what Allah revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. They believed it with certainty, and then they saw it with their own eyes. Then they saw it in front of them. And so it increased their certainty. Allah. Now Allah Ta'ala revealed, الَّذِينَ قَالَ لَهُمُ النَّاسُ إِنَّ النَّاسَ قَدْ جَمَعُوا لَكُمْ فَاخْشَوْهُمْ فزادهم إيمانا وقالوا حسبنا الله ونعم الوكيل فانقلبوا بنعمة من الله وفضل لم يمسسهم سوء واتبعوا رضوان الله وَاللَّهُ ذُو فَضْلٍ عَظِيمٍ. This is a longer ayah. And there were some people during that time that trying to take down the morale of the Muslims. His name was Nu'aym or Na'im. So basically this person was saying to the Muslims that the people that have gathered against them, and this was when Abu Sufyan was still a non-Muslim, and so him and his companions, they got together and they went against, and they tried to, I guess, intimidate the Muslims. So the Muslims were being told, look, the people have gathered against you, fear them. Meaning, don't come, and be careful and beware, don't go. And so what the ayah is saying, that threat, that verbal threat that they made, only increased them in faith and in believing in Allah and the certainty. And so then what did they say as a response to that verbal threat? They said, Hasbunallahu wa ni'mal wakeel. That Allah Ta'ala suffices them. That Allah Ta'ala suffices their matter. Allah Ta'ala is enough to, and for their matter to be taken care of. And that He is the best one to rely upon. Hasbunallah, yani Allah Ta'ala suffices to take care of this matter for us, to take care of our matter. And wa ni'mal wakeel, and He is the best one to rely upon. And so they went out with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. And so they went out with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and the terror entered the hearts of those non-believers that had gathered against the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. Subhanallah. Another ayah. وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ, and is the order to have the reliance upon Allah, the one who is attributed with eternal and everlasting life, that is unlike our life and that does not die. وَعَلَى اللَّهِ فَلْيَتَوَكَّلِ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, which means, and upon Allah let the believers rely. فَإِذَا حَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ, yani once you have decided upon something, and along with having a counsel, then rely on Allah, and go forward with the confidence in your heart, relying on Allah. And the verses in ordering for having reliance are many and known. Allah Ta'ala revealed, وَمَن يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ, which means He suffices him. Yani the one who truly relies on Allah Ta'ala, and his matter will be taken care of. And that's a fact. The one who relies on Allah Ta'ala in the perfect way, and his matter will be taken care of. Subhanallah. And the Muslims, they need to be more confident. They need to be less worried, less concerned about worldly matters, more concerned about hereafter matters, less concerned about, I don't know, subhanAllah. Sometimes you just get the feeling that some Muslims are so scared and frightened of little things, when they should be scared and frightened about big things, and the things that truly matter, like risking going to hellfire, like risking your life in the grave. And then finally he mentioned the last ayah here, إنما المؤمنون الذين إذا ذكر الله وجلت قلوبهم وإذا تليت عليهم آياته زادتهم إيمانا وعلى ربهم يتوكلون. And which means, truly indeed, the Muslims are the ones who, when the name of Allah is mentioned, when the promise of Allah, when the threat of Allah is mentioned, their hearts fear, or their hearts become filled with fear. And this, of course, is referring to the perfect Muslims. And when the verses of the Quran are recited upon them, it increases them in certainty and faith, and upon their Lord they rely. And the verses about the merit of reliance upon Allah are many and well known. As for the hadith number 74, from the route of Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma, that he said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, عرضت علي الأمم فرأيت النبي ومعه الرهيط والنبي ومعه الرجل والرجلان والنبي وليس معه أحد إذ رفع لي سواد عظيم فظننت أنهم أمتي فقيل لي هذا موسى وقومه ولكن انظر إلى الأفق فنظرت فإذا سواد عظيم فقيل لي انظر إلى الأفق الآخر فإذا سواد عظيم فقيل لي هذه أمتك ومعهم 70,000 يدخلون الجنة بغير حساب ولا عذاب. So, and this is something that the Prophet ﷺ, he was shown this. And there are certain instances where the Prophet ﷺ, he is shown something, and the examples of what something will be like in the future, and not that this thing has already occurred. For example, the Prophet ﷺ, he was given the ability to enter paradise and see the examples of the inhabitants of paradise, and he saw that the majority of the inhabitants of paradise would be the poor people. But that doesn't mean that there's currently poor people right now in paradise. And the Prophet ﷺ was enabled to look into hellfire. He did not go into hellfire. He did not step into hellfire. He was enabled to see inside of it, and he saw an example of what would exist in hellfire. And after Judgment Day, there's currently not anyone in hellfire right now, but he was given the ability to see examples of what would be there. So same thing with this. The Prophet ﷺ, and he was shown an example of something that would occur in the hereafter. So the Prophet ﷺ, he was shown the nations, the different nations of the past, the different Muslim nations of the past. Because as you know, all the prophets were Muslim. Adam alayhi salam, our father, was the first prophet and messenger, and everyone was Muslim during his lifetime and during the lifetime of his son, the second prophet Sheeth, and during the lifetime of the next prophet, Prophet Idris, till after Prophet Idris passed away, and then there was the first Jahiliyyah. Blasphemy occurred after Prophet Idris alayhi salam died. Then the first Jahiliyyah, that's the first Jahiliyyah that happened. And then Prophet Nuh alayhi salam was sent to the people on earth who had committed kufr and blasphemy and shirk, and he was the first prophet and messenger to be sent to the people that had become blasphemers. This is why in some hadiths you'll find the wording awwalu man ursila, or the first one that was sent was Noah, but it's a proportional, a relative firstness, not the absolute firstness. No, don't do that. So all the prophets were Muslims, and Prophet Adam alayhi salam, all the people of his time were Muslim. Prophet Sheeth, all the people of his time were Muslim. Prophet Idris, all the people of his time were Muslim. Then after that was when blasphemy showed up, and so when Prophet Nuh alayhi salam was sent to the earth, he was calling them back to Al-Islam, and he was calling them to leave out blasphemy and to return to the true religion, which is to worship the Creator only. And he called them to Al-Islam for over 8 centuries. And at the end, only about 80 people believed in him. And so on and so forth. And every prophet that came after that, that they would be sent to a group of people, they would call the people to Al-Islam. Some of them would answer the call, some of them would reject. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying that he was shown these different nations, and he saw that there would be a prophet, and he would have a group of people with him. And he would see a prophet, and he would have one believer with him. One person believed in him. And he would see another prophet, and he would have 2 men that believed in him. And he would see a prophet, and he would see that there was nobody with him, meaning nobody believed in him. So nobody answered the call. Nobody embraced Islam from that prophet, for example. And then it was told to him, and then he saw a great congregation, or a large number of people, and he said, and he thought that that would be his nation. It was said to him, this is Moses and his nation. However, look at the horizon. So he looked, and he saw that there was a great group of people, and that they had, and so it was told to him, this is your nation, and with them is 70,000 that enter paradise without reckoning and without torture. And when it says without reckoning, and it means without a difficult, and without any difficulty in the reckoning. So basically his reckoning would go smoothly, because they would be pious, because they did the good deeds, because they did not commit sins. So that's 70,000 of those Muslims. Those are the first batches of Muslims that enter paradise, and those are the best Muslims. So it means that their reckoning is easy. It doesn't mean that their reckoning is non-existent. So they will have a reckoning, but it will be smooth, and they will enter paradise without previous torture. So then the Prophet ﷺ got up, and he entered his home, and the people, they started to delve into those that enter paradise, and he's talking about those that enter paradise, or let's say speculating about those that enter paradise with the easy reckoning and without torture. And so some of them said, perhaps they are the ones who they were the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And some of them said, perhaps they are the ones who they were born in Islam, and meaning that they were born to Muslim parents. And that they never associated partners with Allah. And then they mentioned certain things, and then the Prophet ﷺ, he went out, and he said, what are you guys, or what are you talking about? What are you delving into? And what is the conversation about? And they told him, and he said, هُمُ الَّذِينَ لَا يَرْقُونَ وَلَا يَسْتَرْقُونَ وَلَا يَتَطَيَّرُونَ وَعَلَى رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. So basically, the Prophet ﷺ, he described them, and who are these 70,000. So this is among the traits of those 70,000, the first batches of Muslims that enter paradise. He said they are among the people who they leave out the non-permissible remedy recitation. which is called al-ruqya. Yani, in those times, and also some people, they would say certain words that are not Islamic to try and heal someone from a sickness or from something that was inflicting them. And so, of course, that those things that they were saying were not Islamic, therefore they were not permissible. So what's meant by the Prophet ﷺ is the forbidden ruqya, and not the Islamic one. And he said, وَلَا يَسْتَرْقُونَ. It means that the Prophet ﷺ is referring to those that they seek the forbidden ruqya. So basically there is a permissible ruqya, the religious ruqya, which is when you recite verses of the Quran, say certain names of Allah a certain number of times to cure someone, to relieve someone of a sickness or something like that. This is permissible. Like to recite al-Fatiha 7 times on someone that has some physical sickness, or to say certain names of Allah for someone, to recite certain verses of the Quran if the person is inflicted with something physically or spiritually. So this is the permissible ruqya. So the Prophet ﷺ is not referring to the non-Islamic ruqya. وَلَا يَتَطَيَّرُونَ is referring to the superstitious people, the people who are superstitious. So among the traits of those perfect Muslims, those 70,000 that enter paradise with the first people to enter paradise without any previous torture, among their traits, among their attributes is that they're not superstitious. So the perfect Muslim, he would not be superstitious. And then the last thing is وَعَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ, and upon their Lord they rely. So that's the reason that this hadith was mentioned under this category, is because among the traits of those perfect Muslims who get that merit of entering paradise without previous torture is that they rely on Allah Ta'ala. So then a companion, his name is Ukkasha, the son of Mihsan. He said, make supplication to Allah to make me among them. And so then the Prophet ﷺ, of course, through the revelation, he said, Anta minhum, you are among them. Then another man got up and he said, make supplication to Allah to make me among them. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ukkasha beat you to it. So that is, and of course, the Prophet ﷺ does not speak without knowledge. It was revealed to him that this was to be granted to Ukkasha, but it was not to be granted to the other person. And this is from the etiquette of the Prophet ﷺ. So it was a way of the Prophet ﷺ being lighthearted with him. And Allah Ta'ala knows best.